we were going to imagine together what the true north of the Northern Spirit House is, what would what would leap out if we allowed ourselves to dive into that question?
What can we find when we really open this question? What do we find we would use? I mean, you got Google Maps, you got the maps, you got navigational instruments, you got all of that on the outer side. But what navigational instruments and what maps can we use for our inner lives? What would they look like? I mean, obviously being working with runes and sigils, they have certainly given me portals to certain directions, and that's been very interesting to experience. But there's going to be so much more there that we can start to look at. And maybe an art form could be revealed from that investigation.
The image that came to mind from my brief time studying ethnomusicology was the horsehead fiddle from Mongolia, and how I've heard that both the horsehead fiddle and Tuvan throat singing, in some way we can make the metaphor that they're cartographies. They are aural sound music map of an ecology, of a landscape being sung through an instrument or a person. And I wonder, just musing on, okay, so what are the tools? What are the tools? Sound is obviously a tool. It's a well-grooved tool, but given a lack of tradition and a lack of learning, what are the tools that we can use inspired by these provocations from history or from archaeology or from myth, but tools that make sense now?
And also, when we work with the worlds, in particularly of the Tree of Life, there are 7 created worlds, and there are 2 that are primordial worlds. But we also need to recognize that the tree is always growing, and that's something that we miss sometimes. That new worlds are born right from this tree, and it could be that if we navigate into our inner worlds with the right tools, that we actually discover new worlds. And language does that. I would argue that, for example, Tolkien was not so much the inventor of his world. He was more the perceiver of it. And that's something I would love to work on in the year course, to have serious navigators out there looking for new worlds, new sensations that comes from the Tree of Life. And maybe some of those worlds have answers that we need today with a lot of the issues that we're facing.
And I love the interface with doing it solo, and then also having this kind of cauldron of connection that we're calling in, where our maps and our experiences of other worlds are brought together with more and more maps.
There's an inner engineering that we're going to have to work on. Altered states, of course, trance work and meditation, prayers, all of these things, sigil work. Sigil are great tools for opening up the potentiality of perception. Yeah, so I think there'll be quite a quest that we'll be on this year within the course.
Yeah, and I think that the structure that you and I are calling in really is going to allow it to lend itself to that kind of diversity of study, to play with the sort of central node of a once monthly call where we come together in the lecture hall that is possible in the Northern Spirit House, where the teachings are brought forward and these provocations around projects or quests to be sent out upon, and then concurrently once a month meeting with at least 2 cohorts, smaller groups of practice and connection where trust and fellowship can be developed, but also these maps can be compared and the progress on our projects can be updated to have these sort of 2 realms happening at the same time of learning and then integration, and to be facilitated in both those processes um, by us as the you know centerpiece, but then by a whole community of learners and teachers who are coming together for this project. There's grief-worthy things happening every moment of every day, and so to bring um, that in as well as a feeding of the world tree, that these are the times we live in, and there's these directives in the myth and in the realm um, to turn towards those things with grief as a regenerative tool.
There's a great navigational. It's almost there. You almost have you're touching upon the direction there. We spoke about where the true north can lie. Well, grief will certainly provide a direction which is impossible to bypass, right? We cannot ignore it in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way of discovering new worlds, because of the grief feeds the tree of life, and the tree of life is growing, and if its tree of life is growing, there's new worlds that are being born inside of us as much as on the outside. So looking at the tree of life as a tree, as an ecosystems inside of us, provides then the beautiful, in a way, the exciting possibility that there could be discoveries within oneself that can find gratitude, that can find joy, that can find all of these fantastic life lessons to move from, say, grief to gratitude. But if we don't feed this tree, and it starts to become full of our forgetfulness, and the drought sets in, and then that is where I think nihilism and self-centeredness and all of those things starts to show as symptoms of drought, symptoms of the lack of rain. Mm-hmm. Particularly from our own tears, which is then the inner aspect of that ecosystem. We need to water our own plants.
Andreas, given that you're deep in the teaching and you've got so many different things going on, and you've been doing this and you're doing rituals and you're doing all this, what is calling you to do this course? Like, what is your why? Why are you saying yes to something like this?
The only reason why I'm interested in working with this content, with myth, with stories, is to find the place where you receive, in some fashion, you receive a gift that you can offer to a community, to a person, to a family, or to an ecosystem, and that what you're working for is a bit bigger than your own set of dramas, your own set of ways of your life, that you can go a little bit enlarging the sense of self and moving into that place where you think, okay, I will find some gifts through this content that I can then bring to my community.